Meeting to order. Karen, can you take the roll, please?
Commissioner Young,
Here.
Commissioner Miller, Commissioner Keen,
Here.
Commissioner Brink,
Here.
Commissioner Kubal, Commissioner Steeler,
Here.
and Chair Gerard.
Here. I ask if you're able to please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before the chair asks for a motion to approve the agenda, I'd like to formally welcome our newest Planning Commission member, Don Steeler, on the end there. He comes with us with good experience. So I think you guys will find that he's, will have plenty to add. Might be a little quiet the first couple meetings, but who knows? So, Don, when we get to the other section, you'll be welcome to chime in and give us a little background and whatnot.
You want me to give you background? I'm sorry?
Later,
Later.
at
You
the
got
end
it.
of the
Thank
meeting.
you. Good.
So welcome. The chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented or with modifications.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I got a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions?
I will abstain since I was not here.
Motion carries. Approved, motion, chair is looking for a motion to approve the planning commission meeting minutes from May 11th, 2022.
Mr. Chair, I would make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion on the minutes or the motion? Hearing none, excuse me, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions?
And I will abstain since I was not at that meeting.
Okay. Next up is the Gateway Green PUD amendment. At the end of this, I will remind the commission that this was one of those that we make a recommendation to the city council. So we just keep that in mind. So with that, Nathan, are you presenting?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair. I'm going to pull up a site plan for us all to look at while I give you kind of a really quick background on the initial review and then to kind of tell you the most recent review that we've done. So this is, I would remind you, in the Gateway Green subdivision. This is in an area that did receive a planned unit development final plan approval. That was in 2004 initially, and there were 216 dwelling units at the time. A range of different units were being proposed and ultimately approved. These units range from cluster homes, townhomes, villa homes, and condominium homes, which are effectively larger multi-unit buildings. So as a background or an overview for this particular request, the applicant is proposing to reduce the building pad or area of their existing four lots, reduce that or consolidate it into 3 future lots. So a fourplex to a triplex. The city's ordinance requires an amendment to the PUD in instances where there's any changes in density, whether it's up or down. In addition to that change that they're proposing, they have also requested an amendment which would remove a segment of the sidewalk from the PUD area, or what's required of them to construct. The basis for this request was partially on the cost of constructing the sidewalk, but also the applicant is stating that this specific portion of the sidewalk does not seem necessary based on changes in how the buildings specifically are designed. Historically, the buildings would have been, they would have had an exit or a walkway that would have touched the north part of this site, or the sidewalk that kind of wraps around the back of this building. So again, just kind of an overview of the zoning review. This particular request, both the conversion from 4 to 3 of the units and the sidewalk do appear generally to be consistent with the city's performance standards in addition to zoning for this area. Now, the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing at the last meeting on May 11th. We have not received any comments since that time. And so at that meeting, we did discuss a more lengthy discussion happened on parking in this specific subdivision. So staff went back and reviewed historically what was approved and basically what the parameters were with that approval. And so things that we looked at were the preliminary staff report for this development and the preliminary PUD design, in addition to the actual final staff report, which was included as an attachment here, and the final PUD design book, which was attached here as well. In this PUD, the specific parking requirements were based on the type of unit that was to be built. So cluster homes came with 2 garage spaces required and 2 surface stalls. Town villas, same thing. The townhomes, although it wasn't listed in the 2004 staff report, the preliminary staff report did indicate that there would be effectively 2 garage stalls and 2 surface stalls in addition to the other unit types here. And then the condominium homes would require 84 garage units and 84 surface stalls. Those are the larger buildings with more units in them. And so in total, there are, on this site plan, there was a requirement of 152 spaces that were outside of buildings and not including any driveways. So with all of that being said, in reviewing the approved plans, in addition to the city code requirements for townhome buildings, it was determined by staff that this particular request does appear to meet the parking requirements that were required both at the time of the original PUD approval and those requirements for townhomes in city code currently. Therefore, that's the basis for the staff's recommendation for the Planning Commission and the City Council to approve the project as presented here. Really quickly, I'll kind of just show you the PUD. This is the PUD book, part of the PUD booklet that was included in the staff report. You can see there's, on the right side, there's a column which indicates the unit types. Specifically, I'd remind everyone, I'll zoom in here, we're looking at this townhome here. And you can see that surface parking is kind of spread throughout the development. And then I'll go to the second part of one of the plans that was included in the staff report. This is a little bit more clear in terms of where the location of all of those surface stalls was. And then here is part of the staff report that was mentioned in this one, which indicates the various requirements for each unit. So these are design standards for each unit. So that's what I have prepared for you at this time. I would remind you that we also had looked at the required condition for PUD review. The Planning Commission reviewed those at the last meeting. Next steps for this project would be, if this amendment is proposed, building permit and a lot line adjustment application. So that's what I have prepared. I think that our applicant is on Zoom with us this evening. If you have any questions for them, they were unable to attend the meeting in person.
Questions of staff? Susan?
Nathan, I believe that the applicant is still asking that the sidewalk be removed in those areas. And thank you for sending us this is one of the few original plats that I did not keep. But one of the things that I did notice was that Gateway Green, and the description, and it says interconnected roadways, sidewalk, and pathway systems. And so as I'm looking at this, seeing where the sidewalk will remain, seeing the connection to the sidewalk to, it looks like the east, if north is at the top of the page, removing this would remove the interconnection of the sidewalks. And so how did you come to the determination that removing that sidewalk would still be in compliance with the plan and the blend of, that this plat envisioned when it was originally approved
Yeah,
by
so
the
that,
city?
fair question. At the last meeting, we kind of discussed some of the possibilities potentially for future connections. They're simply just possibilities. There's no real plans for them at this time. I can show you the existing conditions in this area, but I could also show you here the, you can, on this plan here on the screen, you can kind of see some of the connections that were proposed within the development. With this request, the applicant is removing, as you stated, or proposing to remove this portion. The cursor is running over here. The sidewalk would remain on the east side of the building and would allow for a continuous path south. So in terms of interconnections, what may be lost is simply the connections that are opportunities that are surrounding this building around the back. So the area in this annotated survey that's red would not be constructed, while the area that's shown not in red would be.
Thank you.
Other questions of staff? Mike?
The area on the east side of that building, is any of that trail system in there now? Behind all the other townhomes?
So I can show you an aerial. This may not be exactly the conditions on the ground right now, but it's gonna be pretty close. So give me a moment here to zoom in and find the right spot.
Right there.
So you can kind of see what's been constructed to date in here, and I can turn some of our trails on if you give me a moment here. This helps to kind of highlight some of the trails that are in this area.
Can you pan over to the west? And there's a big park there in the middle, correct?
Yes, that appears correct.
Are there any entrances to that park that were 223.75 on the east side? Are there any
No.
entrances?
No, you'd have to go
Okay,
to the main entrance.
okay, thank you.
Other questions of staff? Would the applicant like to add any comments?
Hold on one second here, I have to figure out how to switch, let's see if I can do it. Heck, just give me 1 second. Let me try this. Everybody plug your ears for a second. Go ahead and talk and see if that works. Dilip, can you hear me? If you can, talk. Not hearing anymore. Let me try one more
Got
thing.
his system on mute?
He does, but let me just try one more thing. I have three volume controls, so it's a combination of which ones are turned up to get sound into the room, so. Just give me 1 second. Dilip, go ahead and try again.
Okay, this is Dan Kurth. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Yep, thank you.
Okay. The reason also on the sidewalk pertaining to that, that's been deleted. If you guys have realized in the original plans that the builder had submitted for the townhomes, they had entrances in the back, not in the front. So they needed the sidewalks to get into their entrance. This unit has all entrances in the front. And also, I think you'll notice some of the new twin homes and townhomes also are set up the same way. But the original complex was designed for entrances in the back, so they all needed sidewalks to connect in the front to get to the back entrances.
We may have a couple questions. Are you prepared for those?
Yes.
Susan?
So you are not anticipating that residents will exit from the rear, for instance, to go out on their patio and then go out to the trails that would link to the east? There wouldn't be
They- I mean, they
access,
still,
there wouldn't be access from their units to the back to access that potential sidewalk?
they could access through their patio through the yard. And also having that sidewalk now also really deters away from the green area because those pads are very close to there's a big slope from where the pad we can build on to the end, and it slopes down into that pond at a pretty drastic level, okay? So that's also makes that sidewalk a little more difficult to install, but they're basically, back is only their patio area, not their entrance, and then they can still have access to the trail access, and that's the last building in that development to the end.
But because of the
So there's
slope,
no,
because of the slope, it will be very difficult for them to access it without a sidewalk.
no, it'd be very difficult to build a sidewalk where it slopes. If you look at the grade, and that's why we also propose that it drops off quite a bit in that area. There's plenty of walking area as they exit the patio door and go to the right to connect to the sidewalk on the side, okay? And also, it's the last building on that unit, so it's really not connected with other units that have to go through there to get to any of the sidewalks that's been in that situation because of the entrances of each unit was in the back.
Okay. My concern was that if folks are going to go out the back to get to their trails and sidewalk, without a concrete sidewalk and that slope, you're just going to increase erosion and increase mud and issues. But if you're confident that that wouldn't occur, I'll accept that. And that
No,
they
I think
wouldn't,
the
and that they
erosion-
wouldn't use it on a regular basis.
Right, and there's enough room from where the building ends where they have a little patio to walk in the area that's not sloped. And if you put the sidewalk there, that slope in the back towards the pond would have to increase because you have to make that sidewalk level where it slopes. If you look at the elevation, I can't blow it up here, but it drops off from there to the lot line over 2 feet as it is. We will probably lower that pad a little bit, maybe a 3/4 of a foot, so the slope of the driveway is not as steep too.
Other questions of the applicant? Thank you. This is not a public hearing, but do we have anyone who would want to? All right, so commissioners, what would you like to do here?
I have a question. Do we have any pictures of I mean, could they blow up a picture of the 2004 plan of the fourplex? They had no back, they were gonna have their front doors in the back and no doors by the garage?
Right.
The original eightplex was that way, when it was originally 8. And then it went
Right.
to 4, and now it's 3, my understanding.
Right, but I'm talking about from the eightplex, that makes sense, but the fourplex,
Even the fourplexes had entrances in the back. The front was the garage, you can get in through the garage, but the main entrance was a sidewalk that curves around and goes into. Nathan, do you have one of the floor plans of those, what they were proposing? Most of them are built. If you can blow up, I don't know if you have a Google map, you probably can zoom down, you'll see there's a little entranceway in the back.
Sure, we can show some of the existing conditions here. I'm gonna pull up on GIS first here. So these are similar units. Google Maps wouldn't really show the entrances on the rear of the
Doesn't, yeah.
property,
The
so.
front is a driveway, there's no door entrances there through there, then it goes in the back, and then there's entrances into the units from the back.
Right, I just want to clarify here, so what we're looking at is the two requests here are, one, to convert this, this 4-unit townhome existing into a 3. The second request is to remove a specific segment of sidewalk, just to clarify here. And one thing that we didn't show you previously would be, this is from that PUD booklet. It sort of shows which units were townhomes. And so a little bit more specifically, this is like what you would expect the kind of the built form to look like for those types of units in the original PUD.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any problem with going from a fourplex to a triplex. That's not at all an issue for me.
I'm with you. In this case, I don't have a lot of issue with the sidewalk being eliminated in the back, considering it really doesn't go, it just loops around the back of the building, and I don't get, excuse me, a strong impression from staff that this will ever connect over to that other development off of this sidewalk.
I am unaware of any plans at the moment.
Yeah, there's a very limited space between the two structures. I think we've determined it to only be about 10 feet from property line to property line. So for us to adequately get any sort of safe pedestrian trail through there across private land, I think it would be a real feat.
Thank you. So, for that, and that reason, I would say I would be fine without the sidewalk, so.
My concern is connecting to the east.
Pardon me?
My concern with the sidewalk is connecting to the east, and without it, especially with the slope, over time, you're going to get the paths, and you're going to get more erosion, and you're going to get more issues into that wetland.
So, if
And if
we,
you've got enough, if he's assuring us that there's plenty of room for them to walk, then there should be plenty of room for a 3-foot sidewalk.
so really what your concern is the back, not the west
Yeah.
side?
Yeah.
If you were living in unit number 1, do you think that's, I mean, I think if I was living in unit number 1 to access the sidewalk, I wouldn't go off my back deck. I just think I would be kind of intruding on the space of my neighbors, going within 15 feet of their back door, sidewalk or no sidewalk, when I can just go out the front and get to the sidewalk.
It's the way the whole
I
subdivision
think that's
was
a
put
good
together.
point.
Yeah.
I understand that it was put together and made with the path there and that, but,
And that's the way that the rest of the subdivision is with the,
okay.
on the back.
Are there, as Chair mentioned, this was never intended to exit to the west, over to that other park, correct? So it would just be these anyone who wants to walk the walking path could conceivably use the path there.
Nathan, are you looking for 2 motions tonight? One for the 4 to 3 and one for the sidewalk?
I think that would be the better way to do this, yes, 2 motions. We would have, with both motions, we would suggest the same proposed conditions of approval, and that would be 1 through 6 here that are written in the staff report.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question? Are there any other units in this subdivision where there are similar questions or issues like this that are going to be brought up in the future? Or have they all been
Most of this is,
nailed down?
I think, has been built except just due south of here, correct?
Yeah, I'll kind of zoom out, and again, this is not an exactly precise aerial, although it should be really close. So you can see really in this PUD, there's not many remaining units left to be constructed, and of the townhomes that are originally proposed, it's not, I don't know if there are any here, if you're just kind of looking at it really quick.
Can you go to that map again and superimpose the path, the walkways on there again?
You're looking for the walkways?
Yeah,
This one?
where you looked before and you superimposed they were in blue, I think, but or
On your Google
maybe
map.
that wasn't all of them. Yeah, this is the one, yes. I guess it
These-
doesn't cover all of them, but
These are only what have been existing today.
sure.
And those sixplexes in the middle between where we're looking at now and where you've got the blue walking path, those are not done yet, correct?
These here,
Yes, sir.
those are not built,
Okay.
to my knowledge.
And is there, if we go back to the original plan behind there, do they have, I believe they have sidewalks coming through both on the north? And what happens on the west side then? There's no sidewalks on the back? Down further there?
Yeah, there's no sidewalks here that are shown on this map, this
Okay.
circulation map.
Okay.
And they didn't bring the sidewalks down that west side, probably because of the other residences on that side and.
Mr. Chair, I move to recommend City Council approval of the PUD amendment, request to reconfigure the lots from 4 to 3 with conditions 1 to 6 identified by staff.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We're down to the sidewalk.
I'll make a motion to accept staff recommendations to eliminate that sidewalk behind the triplex, proposed triplex, as shown in the diagram.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Does that include the 6 conditions? Does that include the 6 conditions?
Including the 6 conditions.
Any discussion on the motion? Susan?
Nathan, would it be your expectation then that when the sixplexes are built, you would also not require the sidewalk on the north side of there?
No, we would still require this segment of sidewalk that the cursor is running over. That sidewalk would connect with what is going to be constructed by this applicant, which is this leg that you see here, the cursor running over.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion?
That's my big concern.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. So next, this will go to City Council, and they will make the final decision on this application. So good luck with your project.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Item 7, 1840 Forest Road North. It's a rezone request. We're going to hold a public hearing. We'll consider this application. So the way this will work tonight is that, similar to the last one, the staff will give an overview of the application. Commission will ask any questions that they have for clarity. We'll ask the applicant if they wish to speak. We may have questions for the applicant. When that's complete, we will then host a public hearing, and anyone who's interested in speaking to this application, I'll give a few more instructions then, and we will sit here until everyone gets their say, whether they are in the audience or online. We will close the public hearing then, and then we will bring it back to the commission, who will be making a recommendation to City Council. So with that, Abby, are you presenting?
I am. So John Cook has petitioned, or made application to the City of Forest Lake to rezone the property at 18440 Forest Road North from agricultural to limited industrial business, which is the B3 district. He owns a business called Right Way, which is a contracting service company, and he would like to use the property for indoor storage and officing needs at this time, but in the future has the hope to add a sales area for patio and backyard products. So what the commission needs to find tonight is that the request is compatible with the comprehensive plan, but also that contracting services are a use that is somewhat similar to those uses allowed in the B3 district. It is a 21 acre site, give or take a little bit, that's currently used for agricultural operations. There's a single family residence, a large pole barn on the building. Ethan, would you zoom in just to the next one a little bit? Or go to the next map, thank you. Has a very large pole barn building on it and a couple other smaller outbuildings. The accessory structures would be used to house equipment and materials for the business. The house itself would be used for officing needs. We did learn through this process thus far, there is an existing non-conforming business that's operating on the site. It's a asphalt restoration company. We haven't taken action on that, but given the pending application right now. Contracting services have been allowed within the B3 district, elsewhere within the community. So when we're looking at requests for amendments to the zoning map, we look to see a variety of things, whether or not the use is consistent with those uses within the vicinity, the suitability of the land use, creation of any sort of nonconformities, public facilities within the area, buffers and transitions. The adjacent properties are pretty much all agricultural with the exception of kind of the far northwest corner, which is adjacent to the Tanners Brook Golf Course. The B3 district allows for, like I said, many different types of commercial and industrial uses. Many of them, though, would not be eligible for the site, given the fact that public utilities are not available on the site right now. The open sales that have been requested for the future would require a site plan amendment from this commission. So at that time, that would come back before this commission for review again. There's some difficulty when we're analyzing this this zoning map amendment. There's a few big things that really stick out. The future land use map of the comprehensive plan guides the property in a split fashion. And that split fashion calls for a mixed use future use on the east side of the property, whereas on the west side of the property, it is guided for highway business. It's kind of a unique circumstance where there is that split use. I would say this is not typical throughout the community, but along that Highway 61 corridor, we really want to see that highway business look and feel in the future. The highway mixed use, the highway business area, that kind of area you see in pink in the southwest corner of the city, was anticipated is guided in this fashion with the anticipation that there may potentially be a connecting point to the I-35 corridor in the future, either at that 180th Street or 190th Street. If that connection potentially occurred, this area is really prime for that business use versus what would probably otherwise be residential uses. The city guided that with the anticipation of, but not necessarily with any plans for interchanges at this time. One of the other challenges is the city has not yet aligned its comprehensive plan or its zoning code with this comprehensive plan. So traditionally, communities create their comprehensive plan, update their comprehensive plan, and then what they do is they update their zoning codes to align with that comprehensive plan. The city has not yet done that. There's a variety of reasons, but simply we've just been low-staffed during this time period in which it would have traditionally been done. That is a project that we will be seeing coming forward, hopefully yet this year. I think the chair would appreciate that. The next thing that makes it a little challenging is the B3 district is a mix of industrial and commercial uses. The question of whether or not that B3 district is really consistent with that mixed use that we want to see along that highway corridor. So again, that eastern half of the property is guided for mixed use, residential, some commercial, all walkability. That split zoning or that split use is really that confining factor there, though, of the B3 doesn't necessarily fit with either of those. It fits a little in one, not as much in the other. And then the last thing to note is that the property itself is located in what we anticipate an area that urban services won't be extended to until at least 2030. So the MUSA boundary, it's the Metropolitan Urban Services Area. That boundary, essentially, we have a 2030 boundary and a 2040 boundary. This is within the area that the services wouldn't likely be extended to until 2030, sometime between 2030 and 2040. Now, that's not to say that it couldn't happen before then if development was ready and development was encouraging and helping pay for those service extensions, but it's not within the city's horizon right now to extend those services before 2030. So all of this said, as I noted, we look at kind of the use, the suitability, creation of nonconformities. No matter what happens with the rezoning, either now as a petition from the applicant or a rezoning as an action of the city, the existing use of the property, a single-family residence with agricultural uses, will become non-conforming. And one of the things that we know is that we want to try to transition the property to uses that are more consistent with the comprehensive plan. And staff notes that the B3 district seems like a good, almost, I didn't use the word, but holding zone or an interim zone until we know exactly what this highway business district is going to look like, as well as that mixed use district. Because the uses of the property that he's proposing, the house, the pole barn, are actually on the west side of the property in the highway business area, we think that it's very consistent, that the B3 is consistent with that highway business. That area that's guided for mixed use is still anticipated to stay agricultural and vacant land. So therefore, we're not really creating any nonconformities with the future land use. Rezoning now is ideal, and it could help, as I noted, just kind of provide for that interim use of the site until the site and its surroundings are more ready for urban development. So therefore, staff is recommending that you recommend to the City Council approval of this rezoning request. I know the applicant is here tonight to chat with you, but does the commission have any questions for me?
Questions for Abby? Hearing none, would the applicant like to add any comments or say a few words?
Few of you folks were at the neighborhood meeting last week. I mean, I'm not a public speaker by any stretch of the imagination. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I don't know that I have anything to add. Just trying to find a spot to run my business out of.
Do we have questions for the applicant at this time? Hold on, Mike. Hold on. Sir, because this is being recorded, I ask you come up to the lectern, state your name and address for the record.
John Cook is my name.
Mike?
I just had one question. I got to the meeting a little late, and what exactly is the entire business, all of it?
So we have a business that as a whole, we transport and set mobile homes and modular structures, commercial structures. We have some large equipment. We have a dump truck. We have a couple of big tractors, and we have 3 or 4 skid loaders, and some different equipment that way that we use to transport and set these units with. So what I'm looking for, we do all of our work off-site. Obviously, we wouldn't be setting in there. We would not be bringing any units in there. All the work that we do it's really the upper Midwest is the territory that we are licensed in. And I'm looking for a place. I live in Lindstrom right now. I lease a spot down in Roseville that we've A, grown out of, and B, we're starting to get theft and vandal problems with. So I'm looking for something where I can come up, I can put all my stuff inside on the weekends. My guys generally are on the job all week long, so we're there Monday morning, Friday afternoon, put stuff away for the weekend. So I'm just looking for a spot where I can keep everything inside. There's a 5,000-foot pole barn there that's ideal for that. And there's another little garage that we, could keep inventory, that type of thing in.
So you have no intention of bringing the modular homes there
No.
and storing them and then move them?
No.
Right.
None whatsoever.
Right, thank you.
Other questions?
Is there any plans of expanding the number of buildings that you currently have?
Not at this point. I mean, I'm 56, I'm trying to get done. And I'll say one of the things that's appealing about this is it's 20 acres on Highway 61, right? In 10 years, hopefully you're going south and Hugo's coming north, and an interchange may or may not be in, and it's worth something. So,
Other questions of the applicant? We may have more for you later.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. The way this works is they will formally open the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to speak to this application, we ask you to come up, state your name and address for the record, spend a couple minutes giving your thoughts on this application. Once everyone has been heard, whether it's in the room here or online, we will close the public hearing and come back for discussion. So with that, we will open the public hearing at 7:41 PM. Does anyone wish to speak to this application?
Good evening. I'm Myron Plotz, living on 6485 184th Street, which is across 61 from where he's going to be. As your staff mentioned, there is a business been operating there for 4 or 5 years. And I asked this at the early meeting, what's going to happen to that business? Because if his business moves in, I don't have a big problem with that. That's fine. I understand it's changing. But now I'm going to have 2 businesses there. And then the other thing that came up I saw in this packet is he's talking about a future outdoor retail sales. So now that's a 3rd business on this 20-acre parcel. Okay? I want to know what's going to be there. Not, oh, this week it's this week it's this, and this week it's that. I don't live close enough that I'm worried about the noise, but everybody around there is on private well and septic. And if stuff happens in 5 years or 10 years, and our wells are all going to hell, who's going to be responsible? That's my fear. I understand you're going to change, but as they said, well and septic or water and septic aren't scheduled to come out there in the next 10, 15, up to 20 years almost. And that's on the west side of 61. We live on the east side, but where the water comes from underground is all over. So that's my concern about the whole thing. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? And I should mention that we typically just take comment here and not have a back and forth discussion. We'll try to cover those questions with staff after the public hearing.
My name is Ellen McCarty. I live at 5730 180th Street North, Hugo, Minnesota. Couple things. One, being that we all live on larger parcels of land out here, I am going to request that if there is any more discussion about this, I asked when we were here a couple weeks ago, I am having to tell all my neighbors. And I really think that they need to notify a larger group because on 180th at least, we use the frontage road. We have to use the frontage road to get out. And all of us, everybody on 180th or majority have to use it. So this will impact them dependent on the situation. And what John's talking about actually sounds like it really isn't going to be a big issue as far as transportation. My concern comes in, there were questions, we've got quality of road, we've got quality of water because we all have wells, and noise. So we were made aware of the fact that there's another business that's an asphalt business, and I mentioned last week, I don't know if they're the same ones that are doing the stuff in the winter, but I even have had to call the police on only one time, not a big deal, not a huge deal. My concern is I feel that as you guys working for the citizens of Forest Lake, we need to address that before we address the other, because this big asphalt company has multiple big, huge vehicles and big semi-looking vehicles, and they have gas tanks on the property. So my concern is, there's a creek that runs through my actual yard and then up and behind all of that. I worry about it, as long as there's safety and we're looking at, I know things are gonna change, but I wanna make sure that all of, are they even, would that company be considered a company that could be in there? I think we need to deal with that. I don't think that's really John's place, even if he gets it. If they say, yep, that's fine, and they follow standards so that everybody is kept safe, that's fine. But I think that we need to make sure that it's safe, because as of the moment, we haven't rezoned, and we have horses, and we have, we drink that water. So, one, I want to make sure what we've got there already, and I don't know if you can zoom in, but what they've effectively done, Nate, can you zoom in next to the barn? Yep. See that barn? What they've effectively done is there's right above the barn, you can see some of the vehicles they have back there. They've gone ahead and they've hidden all of it with really high, so you can't see it from the golf course. You can see them from the road, which is where I saw them. And ironically, they paved the entire driveway because those are heavy vehicles. Again, if they meet criteria of whatever is decided, that's fine, but then we need to look at the frontage road. I don't have any desire, I'm okay with having a dirt road, but we've had to have them come in twice and fix the front where you exit right there from 180, in between 180th and 190th, because it's so heavy traffic already that it keeps getting broken down. And I've actually had to have my car, I had to have a tire replaced because I hit a pothole and literally made my tire flat. So if we're gonna start having big vehicles and things in there, I hear that John, that isn't his plan. But if we're gonna have big, huge vehicles in there, we need to prepare for, we need to get out to go to work. We need to be able, and the last time I called about that area, they couldn't figure out who was responsible for it because it's that little gap between 61 and the frontage road, and I think Forest Lake just said, you know what? We're just gonna go fix it because we know you guys need to use that. So my bigger question is, I think you guys are planning on moving some of that area more into industrial, and I know it's going to go over years, and to be honest with you, I hope you don't do a bunch of these decisions before you find out if they're gonna make a thoroughway on 180th, because if they don't, that will impact the decisions and how you guys move forward. It really will. So it doesn't make sense to start doing some of those and impact us sooner than we need to be. But I do want you to think about our water, our roads, just so that we can keep going to work and we can keep paying our property taxes. And visually, they're doing a good job. I can't even see them from my house. But again, my other request is, nobody is being informed of these meetings. And I feel really uncomfortable about that. I think we're all aware that things are gonna change. But I think that everyone should have a conscious decision whether they come or not. So I would say maybe double the 800 feet to 1,600 feet or whatever, so it at least encompasses 180th, the frontage road, and maybe even 190th, because some of those people will be able to see that property from their houses. So that's my request. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Would anyone else wish to speak to this application? Karen, do we have anyone online who would
There's no
like to
one.
speak? I'm sorry?
There is no one.
Any emails that need to be read in?
None.
Thank you. I'll ask one more time. Does anyone wish to speak to this application? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close the public hearing at 7:49 PM. Thank you for participating. Commissioners? Susan?
John, quick question for you, please? If you could come up. realize that you haven't decided yet. What we decide tonight will make your decision on whether or not to purchase the property. But if you purchase the property, is it your intention to leave the asphalt company there and have them join you in the business?
I would let them, as we talked about this at the last meeting. I haven't talked to the guy. He knows it's for sale, and I've heard through the broker or whatever that he thought about buying it, he couldn't do it. We were moving in. I'll treat people the way I want to be treated. I would not do anything to them this summer. If we close on it, it would be June, July, end of June, beginning of July by the time the soonest we could possibly close on it. I know as a contractor, that's his busy season. I would not make him move out until the end of the year, but we would certainly have that conversation. I would like the whole place for myself.
And
But I'm not gonna go in there and say, all right, you have 30 days to get out. I mean, that's the time of year he's working and making money. They don't work in the winter up here.
well, and in the neighborhood meeting, he may not be laying asphalt in the winter, but it was pointed out that he was bringing in snow.
Yeah, that won't
And
be allowed.
snow storage.
That would not be allowed.
All right, thank you.
The snow removal, absolutely not.
All right, thank you. That helps me.
Other questions? I got one for the staff here. So if we rezone this in, refresh my memory on what happens to who can be in this zone. Would the asphalt plant even be allowed as a use? I'm thinking no, but.
No, it would not. And I just had it up and then I was searching for the notification requirement. I can read off the allowed uses. It's a lot more commercial uses than industrial. Industrial would be limited industrial, light industrial. Give me just a second here till I get to it. But I can read all the very specific uses. If it's rezoned, the staff acknowledges that it's a non-conforming business right now. It's not allowed in the agricultural district. We just found out about this at the neighborhood meeting. It was one of those things that we hadn't started taking any sort of enforcement action. If this is rezoned to B3, we will have to at least put the neighbor or that business owner on notice that he would be in violation with the zoning district requirements. The B3 district allows for, and these would be outright permitted uses, a club or lodge, daycare, funeral home, garden supply store, nursery yard, health recreation facility, hotel, medical uses, motel, motor vehicle, convenience store, parts, repair, service station, offices, plant nurseries, both commercial and wholesale, restaurants, fast food with or without, the restaurants in general, full service or fast food, retail, office, multi-tenant structures, schools, specialty schools, truck stops, wholesale office and showroom, utility substations, that light manufacturing, open sales lot, recreation, self-service storage, veterinary, warehouse and distribution, and then others that you would determine to be similar. We also noted brewery, microdistillery, and tap room. Even when we start to look at our conditional uses, which are pretty limited in this district, places of worship, kennels, schools, and towers. So we have a very long list of uses that would be outright permitted here. They're not as heavy industrial as this one. The reason staff had indicated, and I wouldn't call this an industrial use, but the reason that staff had indicated that we thought these contracting services would be consistent with the B3 is because we already have these types of uses in the B3 districts.
So this use would be very similar to everything we currently have on 61 up here, out on Broadway, Target, Walmart, that area. Nothing
Definitely,
unusual.
yeah, definitely along those uses along the 61 corridor, on the southern edges of town where we have some of those more commercial uses.
Vinco.
Yep.
Don?
Staff, I have a question. There's been a concern about the groundwater brought up by two different people out there. And first of all, as agricultural zoned, what do we allow for having fuel tanks on, what are the farmers allowed to have? And what is there is that a problem beyond this right now?
The zoning code doesn't talk about things like fuel tanks with agricultural operations. It's just one of those things that they kind of end up in different types of business operations for those operations to run. I think we would probably be looking to our partners at both county and state public health to see that whatever is there, if it's not to code, that we would maybe be able to get it to code. I do know that, if I remember right, and John can correct me if I'm wrong, but the building itself is a cement slab floor, correct?
Yeah, there's 60 feet of it is cement, there's 40 feet that is not.
Okay, so the indoor storage, there is a barrier at least in over half of the structure for, to make sure that there isn't things getting into the ground there.
Just want to make, I guess, a quick comment or to clarify a little bit. So when I went through it, it's not an asphalt plant. He runs an asphalt company. So he's a contractor like us, he's got trucks and skid loaders. To my knowledge, how asphalt works is you go to an asphalt plant, they load up your truck with how many ever tons you order, and then you bring that out and you lay it down. And the fuel tank, I believe, it looked like I would guess it's 100-gallon, above ground diesel tank from Cath that he probably fills it's off-road, I'm sure he fills his graders or his, skid loaders or whatever with. But I do know it's not, they're not manufacturing asphalt there. It's kind of using it how I am. That's how we found it, he's storing his stuff there at night as well. Yeah.
Mike?
So let me get this straight. So the lady that was up here earlier saying about the big fuel tanks and that, is that like the trucks that have all the oil in it for blacktopping and that sort of things?
No, it looks like a 100-gallon, maybe, I'm thinking of a 55-gallon drum, so it might be a 100-gallon tank that Cath Oil, I'm familiar with this, they would bring out and fill up with diesel for them, so they don't have to stop and get fuel someplace else. So it's a pump with an above-ground tank for filling up equipment.
So it's not the big trucks with the oil on the back and then they go down the street?
No,
Okay.
nothing like that.
Okay, thank you.
My understanding is consistent with what John said.
What was that?
My understanding is consistent with what he's saying.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
just the one fuel tank?
Yeah.
Okay.
They look safe, I'm just saying it is.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that, because if he's got a bunch of trucks out there that are full of oil and tar and stuff like that for asphalt, that's another story. Thank you.
The public hearing is closed, but sir, I want to make sure everybody in the audience who's going to be impacted gets their answers.
She mentioned that wouldn't be allowed there under the.
Sir, I need you to come up to here though, so that, the people at home want to be riveted to this conversation.
She had mentioned that the asphalt place would not be allowed there under the B3 zoning.
That is
laws.
correct, and it's not allowed in its existing zoning
Yeah.
district. Yep.
So what would it have to change to, what would that fall under then, was my question.
It would probably be a more heavy industrial. I'm not exactly sure which of the districts.
Okay.
The property isn't guided for that heavy industrial, neither the easterly side of the property or the westerly side of the property, which much of your properties are in. It's not a heavy industrial area. We don't
Yeah.
want to have that,
Okay,
those types of
that was my question, thank you.
I have a question for staff. So if this gets rezoned, what's the city's plan of action for this asphalt business?
That isn't something that we have discussed. We were just put on notice last week. The city is a complaint-driven enforcement community. We're not going out proactively seeking violations. The one thing that we have this pending application. We wanted to see what was going to happen with this commission, with the council. And then we're going to have to put the business owner on notice that they are in violation with the zoning district, both the agricultural and the future. Zoning enforcement is difficult. Typically, it takes a lot of pretty please stop letters. until eventually we might end up having to issue a citation for the business operations.
Other questions, comments?
I guess I do have one question regarding the road maintenance issue that was brought up. In the new business or in the new zoning that this would be zoned to, let's say John decides to retire in a year or two and sells this, what other kind of business could be brought in there, and could it bring in a heavier amount of traffic under that zoning that would cause additional maintenance in that area?
Sure, I had just listed some of them,
sorry.
those restaurants, recreation, light manufacturing. One of the challenges with a lot of these uses, other than maybe a commercial plant nursery, is that they're gonna require urban services to be extended. And so it's unlikely that the majority of the B3 district uses that are outright permitted could even operate on this property, given the fact that those urban services aren't there. We don't anticipate extending them, and it's unlikely that any property owner is going to be willing to incur that cost to extend them to this property either. I will note, when it comes to road maintenance, the frontage road along here is really unique in that that road actually goes across all of these properties. It's not its own platted right-of-way. So there's going to end up being, I imagine, at the time of urban development, as time development keeps happening, some discussions about how we acquire right-of-way through here, how it gets maintained in the future. It's not just affecting this property, it's affecting many of the properties along Forest Boulevard North, or Forest Road North.
Susan?
That isn't part of the right-of-way that Washington County bought when they bought the trail right-of-way, and it was my understanding that that was part of the Highway 61 and then Hardwood Creek Trail right-of-way that was purchased by the county.
Some of it is to the north of this property, but not this property, and to the south of this property.
That makes it difficult for the city to maintain that. Who plows that now, please? Snow plows it?
Forest Lake does it up to where 180th, and then it's Hugo.
Thank you.
I have a question. Should I state my name? I know it's not the public hearing anymore. but- Jason Dunlap, I live at 6310 184th Street. So I have some of the same concerns that were shared tonight about traffic, the road itself, increased traffic on the road. Also about the water, which is something I hadn't even considered until now, but am also concerned about it now hearing that stated. But I also have concerns about what's going to happen in the future. So if this is rezoned to business now, to a business plat, that kind of kicks the door open for anything in the future, right? I mean, am I understanding that correctly? That anybody could move in there in the future and start any sort of business?
No, those businesses I listed, the restaurant, I could go back through them again. There's a limited scope, offices, plant nurseries, retail sales, schools. Yes, it's a lot of different types of uses, but any change of use of the property would require what's called a site plan review, in which the applicant would have to come in, make a new application to the city, come before the planning commission. That's when there's things like right-of-way acquisition and access to the property would all be configured. Right now, the indoor storage, this contracting services is one of the very few uses that could occur because there are no urban services in the area.
And as long as there's no water or sewer, most of those would not find it financially viable to move in.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying, but I guess what I'm saying is that if another property maybe adjacent to it goes up for sale in the future and someone else kind of wants to do the same thing, and they want to rezone that and say, hey, they want to move a business in too, Well, this has set precedent then. So now that might be easier for someone else to rezone. And before you know it, that whole thing's gonna be rezoned. And so I'm not sure if I understood correctly that you were saying that that's kind of the city's plan in the future?
That is the city's plan in the future, is to rezone the properties along Highway 61 in a mixed-use fashion. And then the properties in the southwest corner, the kind of pink area up on the highway, which many are up on the map there, many of you live in, to a highway business use. And that was a part of the city's 2040 comprehensive plan that was adopted at the end of probably 2019, as required by the Metropolitan Council.
Okay. Well, I guess my opinion as somebody who lives on that street is that I'd rather not see a bunch of businesses there. But I guess what you're saying is that that's gonna happen regardless?
That is going to happen regardless.
Okay,
But it could be 20, 30 years too.
right.
But it's probably coming, as Hugo comes north and as Forest Lake expands south, it's going to come. What we're trying to do is do it in an organized, planned manner. To your point that, yes, we're gonna do one potentially here, and someone could come later and zone, yes, but it doesn't make it easier or harder, it just would depend on the application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
Every 10 years, the cities, all the cities have to review their comprehensive plans. And when this comprehensive plan was reviewed, the planning commission and groups of citizens had a lot of meetings to talk about what it would look like, what the vision for all of Forest Lake would be. And this pink area that's on the map there was not part of what the community groups that looked at the comp plan and made recommendations, or what the planning commission recommendation was. This was done at the last minute by that particular city council, just before it was turned into the Met Council. And they had a belief at that time that they could influence MnDOT to do the 180th. If MnDOT doesn't do the 180th, there will have to be another comp plan in 10 years, well, in 2029 now, correct?
That is correct.
And so at that time, again, citizens will be asked, what is it that your vision for Forest Lake, including this area, is? And at that time, if there is no indication that there's going to be a connection to the 35 corridor there, that would be a time for you all to say, we have a different vision for this part of the community. And so, yeah, it seems like a long time away, but that kind of comp plan review starts 2 or 3 years ahead of time. And Abby, I think that a valid point was made earlier. Our notification requirements are based on those of prior cities with 30-foot lot lines and that sort of thing. And I think that one of the things that staff and perhaps the council should consider, that in areas like this that are rural, where there, quite frankly, a property is part of, would be wholly encompassed within our typical notification requirements, we should think about not so much the actual distance, but perhaps X number of adjoining properties in a radius. Because it's not really an appropriate notification using what would be appropriate in a subdivision.
Sure. We do have it separated in our code. I think it's 350 feet for kind of our more, residential neighborhoods or suburban neighborhoods, and then 1,000 for our agricultural districts. But we can definitely explore how it is that we do greater notification. Those are our minimums. Staff can always look at even the possibility of maybe a larger area, or site selecting even a little bit larger area, but certainly policy discussions we can have. It's
Thank
great
you.
timing. I'm all about talking about reviewing our policies and procedures and everything right now.
Thank you.
Other questions, discussion?
Can I just make one, comment? I guess it's more for you guys.
Sir, John, if you, The TV audience, you know.
I might want to keep this off the record.
And don't say it.
No,
It's a hallway conversation.
if this goes through, it's easy for me to say, but I promise you, you won't have a better neighbor. If the roads have potholes, whether it's from my trucks or your trucks or whatever it is, as long as the city doesn't have a problem with me bringing in a load of Class 5 every once in a while and taking one of my machines and going up and down the road, I mean, it's 2 blocks. It's not very far. I don't want to beat up my trucks and trailers any more than you do, so that's just something I would do. You know, it's a lot easier to get along with people than not. And you know, I'm a guilty Catholic, so, you know, I'll fix my stuff and your stuff as well. I really will. I want to live in or have a spot that's nice, that appreciates in value. I don't want it to look, and this is coming from me, I don't want it to look like a trailer park. You know, I want everything to be nice and orderly and kept up. And if that's, again, potholes in the road and I need to bring in a truck of Class 5 and drive up and down it for an hour, that's not a big deal to me. It's really not. So, as long as the city doesn't have a problem with me bringing in, you know, Class 5 to fill up holes,
I
I
am
don't know.
not here to give permission.
Okay.
Other discussion?
I'll run up here real quick. And I pretty much know the answer, but I just want to verify. So, if in 5 years, John retires and goes, you know, to live on his yacht or whatever, if another company, if somebody wants to buy it from him, they have to go through the proper procedures to be considered for that land, even though it's industrial. Do they have to do something, or could we turn around and have something there that's going to be a ton of traffic, which is what I worry about, but.
So some of those higher intense traffic uses that I mentioned, retail sales, restaurants, all of those would end up requiring some sort of subdivision or site plan review, something that's gonna come back to this arena, some sort of review in our offices to say, is this a use that's allowed? How are they developing this in a fashion that is fitting with the neighborhood and meeting our standards?
Okay.
Other questions, comments? Otherwise, your chair is looking to see if we want to take an action item. All right, hearing none, I'll make a recommendation to the city council that we approve the zoning amendment for 18440 Road North to rezone it from agricultural to limited industrial business, or to B3.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. So what happens now is that this will go to the city council for final decision. They're your elected officials, were appointed. So they will take this up at,
I believe, I'm just really,
June
the June
13th.
13th city council, thank you.
what day?
June 13th.
So it'll be at the June 13th city council. There will not, there's not a, is there a public hearing there also?
I am
I don't believe so.
100% certain because I don't know our code that well, but.
Susan just whispered in my ear that there will not be a public hearing, so there will not be notices sent out since there's no public hearing. So it's June 13th. I realize that's summer, but if you got nothing to do that night, come on down. The city always likes their constituents to come in.
And at the beginning of every city council meeting, there is a time when citizens can talk about any darn thing they'd like.
That's right.
Open forum.
And I could also, we always will accept anything in writing in advance of meetings that we can share for the council if we need it.
And finally, you can go onto our city website and you can sign up for notices. You will receive a weekly email, And it always gives the schedule of the city meetings that are happening for the following week. So the notice goes out on Fridays. It will list all the meetings for the following week, beginning with the EDA meeting, council meeting is on Mondays. So you'll know, and then it also provides a link. You will be able to go directly to our website, click on that link, it'll open up the agenda, and you'll be able to see what is going to be happening at that meeting.
So to the applicant, good luck with your project. To all of the neighbors that came, thank you for participating this evening. Have a pleasant evening. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting.
We
Or you can
understand if you
roll.
don't.
We don't want to drag yours out.
Well, hey, we're gonna be talking about lot sizes and subdivisions. So, I mean, you want little lots, big lots?
Thanks, guys.
Sometimes they feel that they feel it required to stay.
Absolutely.
Item number 8, residential lot standard review discussion. Nathan, is this you?
I really thought this was going to be a more interesting item for everyone, so sorry that everyone had to leave. Anyways, this item is a continuation of a discussion that the city has had regarding residential lot standards. Specifically, this discussion has revolved around the MXR1 zoning district here in the city. That is the mixed residential and townhome district. That district allows for a mix of single-family lots and detached townhomes, which are effectively single-family lots but smaller, and attached townhomes. So that is what the attached townhomes, or they could be called twin homes rather. That is the mix of different units that are provided for in this district. There is a long resource list at the end of this staff report. So if there are questions, or perhaps we have new commissioners that are looking for some background information, I would encourage the use of that section to kind of read through some of the staff reports that have been written to date. So the main focus of this particular report is the differences between the city's mixed-use residential districts, MXR 1, 2, and 3. And so you can see in here, there is listed the standards that are enshrined for the MXR 1, the MXR 2, and just specifically just looking at single-family lots. I'll just kind of break these things down a little bit. Single-family lots, lot area in the MXR 1 is 15,000 square feet, width of 80 feet. The MXR 2 district allows for single-family lots of 12,500 square feet or greater, and still requires that 80-foot lot width. And the MXR 3 allows the smallest lots in the city for single-family lots. These would be 9,000 square feet or greater, with a minimum lot width requirement of 60 feet. So specifically kind of looking at a high level, we provided some planning staff analysis in the staff report. Really the primary function of the MXR1 zoning district is to allow for single-family, detached townhome, twin home units to be constructed in developing areas of the city. This is primarily the greenfield development that's occurring in the city. I'll bring up a comprehensive plan here. You can see a lot of this area that's tan is low to medium density residential. That is where your MXR1 district is primarily located. The MXR2 zoning district is primarily at present found in areas surrounding commercial mixed-use type corridors in historic Forest Lake. The MXR2 is used in those areas that are seen primarily as residential, but it does allow for some additional unit types, including duplexes rather. And lastly, the MXR3 is found as more of a buffer zone. It allows for greater density in your single-family residential and multi-unit housing. This is a zone that is presently used as sort of a buffer or a transition between higher intensity uses such as industrial or highway business and your more specifically and lower intensity residential development. So over the course of this conversation, one of the things that first started it was identifying seems to be a discrepancy between I'm getting smiles, what the comprehensive plan guides us for and what we're actually able to accomplish with our current standards. So the comprehensive plan guides for 3 to 6 units per acre, but our MXR1 zoning district requires lots that really give us some trouble to meet that guidance, that range of 3 to 6. So that is why staff did recommend some specific changes to these MXR1 standards to help the city meet those density goals, but also to reflect what we're hearing a lot of developers ask for. So these are standards that seem to bridge the gap between what the city currently has and what might be required to meet some of the goals established in the comp plan. What's been discussed previously is reducing the lot area, 15,000 down to 8,500. Reducing the minimum lot width from 80 feet wide to about 65 feet wide. That would leave us with approximately a lot that, if you're meeting the minimum lot width and you're a standard rectangle shaped lot, your depth of your lot is going to be about 130 feet on average. Changing some of the setbacks to reduce the front yard setback, but in this specific staff recommendation, it does include it as some of the previous discussions that the Planning Commission has had, a provision that would allow for the house to be closer to the street, but it would still require the garage to be set back a full 30 feet, and that would accommodate for things like people's toys, parking in the driveway, those types of things. But it would bring the house maybe a little closer to the street, provide a little bit more of a vibrant or more positive aesthetic feel when you're walking down a corridor like that in a neighborhood. And then also taking a look at the setbacks. The side yard setbacks I wanted to call out specifically here. We have discussed a lot preference for the 10-foot setback, and we have also heard from the fire staff and emergency response staff that 10 feet setback is preferred by the city. The reason for that is to help reduce instances where if you have a fire starting, for example, in one house, it's not going to jump to the other quite as easily when your structures are set back farther. The reason that I did include the 7.5 feet as part of the staff suggestion on here is really an ask for the Planning Commission to discuss this particular standard because we do anticipate hearing from developers that they're looking for setbacks to be reduced, and we want to have a pretty clear response for them. So that's why we're looking to have you discuss that particular standard. And then basically the same can be said for the setback between structures. So I'm just kind of rehashing what was initially suggested by staff. But again, the purpose of this was really to discuss the function of the different mixed use MXR zones. And if the Planning Commission is looking for opportunities to allow for more flexibility in development, it could consider changing the standards. I gave the staff recommendation as an example, or it could consider perhaps rezoning certain areas of the city, or other methods to incorporate more flexibility could be identified. So with that, take any questions you have for me, or maybe if Abby wants to jump in. We've been talking about this a lot recently together, so I'm sure she'll have some thoughts for you.
Susan?
When you're looking at your 3 per acre, you're looking at net, right? So on a 100-acre place that's got some wetlands, some streets, some yada yada, you're taking all that stuff out, and it's 3 per acre net, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We actually just confirmed that with the Met Council that that's an acceptable way to measure the density in terms of units per acre.
That being said, Commissioner Young, that net is really only developable acreage. So the undevelopable acreage is the part that you could remove, not for roadways, not for other types of public improvements.
in a place with high ground, someplace in North Dakota that doesn't have any swampland, that's cool. But in Forest Lake, what happens is we have so much area that is wetland or is not developable that then what we're doing is we're squishing stuff together that I don't think that as we were looking at the comp plan, we had envisioned. I was volunteering at the Hugo Yellow Ribbon hamburger night last night, and where do you live? I live in Forest Lake. Can you believe what they're doing in Forest Lake? All those tiny little lots. People don't have any place for their kids to play. They're playing in the streets. There aren't enough parks. Those tiny little lots. Who do they think is going to live in those tiny? I'm serious. She didn't know I was on the planning commission. She didn't know I had anything to do with the city. I just live here. This is not unusual as people start talking about the development that they're seeing in Forest Lake right now. This is not the community that folks are envisioning. I understand that developers are asking for this. I get that. If I was a developer, I would ask you for 3-foot side setbacks. I would say, you know, let me go right up to the, let me put them too deep. I understand their desire to do that. But one of the things that folks say they like about Forest Lake and why they are not going to Hugo is that we typically do have a little bit more space. We consider ourselves Forest Lake, not housing apartments. We're Forest Lake, so the concept is that we've got a little bit more green space and that we are a little bit on the larger lot, especially since we're pretty far out from the metro area and transit is not a big deal here. We don't have it. Transit is not relatively available. So folks that have a mom and a dad and 2 kids probably have 4 or 5 cars plus their toys. And space to store that is important either behind the house or in the driveway. I'm also, except for the developers requesting it, what are the technical engineering reasons for this, for your recommendations?
So the 7.5 is on there because that is what has been explained, at least my understanding is that is the lowest that any staff would feel comfortable going. The preference, the strong preference would be for 10-foot setbacks. And again, I would just reiterate that we just want to have ability to say, Planning Commission discussed this particular type of deviation, and we do not anticipate them being comfortable when asked for it.
I think just to touch on maybe your question, Commissioner Young, you know we're a part of the Met Council region and they've given us this classification. Mm-hmm. But part of the engineering benefits is the more lots you can get on a lot that can be serviced by urban services, it costs less. It makes our homes in our community more affordable. Now, could make them, I could say that, could make them more affordable. Should we necessarily rezone all of the city with this smaller lot design? No. What we're trying to do is trying to gain that comprehensive plan consistency, either by amending an existing district, which is the most ideal, versus having to rezone swaths of parcels throughout the city.
One of the challenges of talking about affordability is that affordability is always discussed. What is the purchase price of your property? Affordability is seldom discussed with what are the property taxes that are going to be required. And if you look at any of the American Planning Association, American City Managers Association, you look at that literature, you know that a single-family home costs a city 1.5 times the property tax that they usually receive from that particular property. Because a single-family home needs more in terms of police, fire, there's more required in terms of snow plowing, keeping water lines maintained in Forest Lake, dredging out our stormwater ponds. So if you're looking at affordability, while the developer is there selling his house and then getting out of town, yes, the more houses you can get in a small place, yes, you can build more homes for a cheaper price. But affordability should also be considered with what it costs a city to maintain the city and the property taxes that are going to be required. And so I have a lot of problem with discussing affordability as just purchase price without also talking about the effect of this on the city and the folks that are already here with the additional city requirements for fire, police, schools, additional water, additional sewer, et cetera, that come with lots more houses in a small area.
Understandable.
Don, you had a comment?
Well, thank you, Susan. Everything you said, I agree with. And the thing that jumped out at me most when I looked at this was the percentage difference in lot area on that single family that we would be jumping, from 15,000 down to 8,500. That's a big square footage move in from one to the other. Some of the others were pretty trivial, a couple foot difference in setbacks here and there, but they. Bolton and Mink gets to be involved with this with many communities other than Forest Lake. I'm curious how some of these other neighboring communities or ones you work with, where they fall on this. Where do they have their limits?
Can we get Don, right before Donovan left, when he gave this
There's a staff report
presentation?
that had a list of a comparison.
Oh, did it?
We have our,
all that up
what
together.
do we call them, our key cities or our?
But they
Our
didn't
peer
include the ones with the
communities.
larger lots like Wyoming.
So here's a list that was created for that particular
Oh,
report.
there we
And, in looking at the methodology of putting that together, these are a list of communities that are fairly similar in terms of geography and somewhat similar in terms of population. I guess, if the question is, what are you seeing in other communities? I first kind of refer you to this list. It's definitely not uncommon to have significantly smaller lot areas, but that doesn't mean that's what is the right thing for Forest Lake.
This is exactly what I was curious about, so.
And I think that perhaps Abby may have some thoughts on which types of cities should be used as peer communities, but I think this is maybe a good starting point for the discussion.
I do know, peer communities aside, these are the ones that were introduced for this assessment. Those peer communities might change in time depending on what we're looking at. I do know and familiar with several of the communities on here, the R3, the R4, where they mention that classification. These aren't traditional single-family residential neighborhoods. These are residential neighborhoods that are guiding a little bit more density. They're allowing for single family, they're allowing for twin family, they might be allowing for townhomes. So that was really the MXR 1 allows for those different types of residential uses already. I think we were trying to find, Donovan was probably trying to find those peer communities that had that kind of like residential district.
And yeah, I guess maybe worth mentioning is the city does have a single-family traditional zoning district, which has virtually the same standards as the single-family lots in the MXR1. They're very comparable, so just worth mentioning.
And where in the undeveloped part of the city are those single-family?
Those lots are primarily surrounding the lake, which all of that land is developed. So the question, where in the city are there? Let me pull up a map. Here's a zoning map, a current zoning map. This is not the future land use map. You can see the more dark yellow lots that are single family are surrounding primarily the lakes. Most of the land that is to be developed, to Commissioner Young's question, that would be primarily zoned MXR1.
But that's because in the single family, a 15,000 square foot lot requires sewer. You can be in a single family with a larger lot, I don't remember the size, and have septic, but I think it needs to be sewer, and the entire lake is sewered.
Yes, the entire lake is sewer. There, I haven't looked at it like today, but I think there could be a difference between, for minimum lot size, that depends on whether it's sewered, unsewered.
But basically, what we're saying is that we're not going to be building any traditional single-family home lots in the city of Forest Lake from here on forward. It's all going to be the townhomes, the small stuff. I'm not ready to say that yet. I know that the Met Council wants us to have lots and lots of dwelling units. I think that Forest Lake has gone above and beyond, and we have permitted and built many, and have several in the works, apartment buildings that give you significant number of dwelling units in a very small space, so that we are meeting some of their population goals, most of their population goals, with high-intensity residential developments.
Nathan, could you bring up the future land use map for a moment?
Yep.
So when the city went through the exercise of developing the comprehensive plan and developing the future land use map, and our future land use map has a rural residential, low-density residential, can you scoot it over just a little to the right so we can see the key?
Oh, yep, sorry.
We've got low to medium density residential, mixed use, high density. The city as a whole balances out to that 3 to 6 units per acre. So where we have some large lot or rural residential or low density residential, those might actually be 3 to 4 units per acre or less in a lot of that rural residential land. The high density is there to help balance that out. On a whole, it balances to the 3 to 6, but it only balances to that 3 to 6 if that low density that low to medium density residential is fitting still within the 3 to 6. If the low density residential, predominantly that MXR1 that we're talking about, doesn't balance to 3 to 6, then it skews in theory, it skews the city's overall 3 to 6 off.
And, I'm sorry, sir.
Go ahead. Let's go back to this Met Council and the 3 to 6 and the MXR1. This is what we've committed to in the comprehensive plan?
So the Metropolitan Council, because we are a part of the metropolitan region in Washington County, we are obligated to meet their standards. The Metropolitan Council has classified the city of Forest Lake with a split classification. If I remember right, it's emerging, suburban, and agricultural.
Yes. Yep. Sounds right.
And in that emerging suburban classification, so anywhere that you are within the metropolitan region, that emerging suburban classification requires you to have a density of 3 to 6 units per acre. As you develop and your community becomes more dense, it could be that the Metropolitan Council changes your classification, changes our classification in the next comprehensive plan round to call us suburban, which then even gives us a greater density requirement.
But it's for the whole area, so like to Susan's point, right, the apartments give you a lot of density, larger lots give you less density. As long as overall we're developing between 3 to 6 or over 3, we're good, as far in the Met Council's eyes?
As a community, now in the areas that are classified for high density, we've got a different requirement. So that might be 10 to 15 or 15 to 20, I don't know units per acre. In the low medium density residential, that's kind of classified for that 3 to 6. That 3 to 6 helps balance out the multifamily and the low density. So we're taking it all on average.
No, but so my question is, when we do the math that we build so many on so many acres, it's got to come out to be over 3.
In the low to medium density residential, yes.
Is that due to the Met Council saying
That's-
that, or is that the city committing to that?
It's the city commuting to that with our future land use map that conforms to the Met Council's density standards.
And the Met Council standard is they have determined what our net developable acreage is, and that 3 to 6 is not on our total 36 square mile land area, it is on net developable, correct?
I believe so, as well as not including those areas that are not in the MUSA boundary. So it's not encompassing the lands designated as agricultural, and I'm not sure about the rural residential. That's south of the
rural
lake, east of
residential
the
is in,
lake.
that's not Seward.
Right, and I just, the density requirement is based on the 2030, 2040 MUSA boundaries. Something that we certainly can help provide a little bit more guidance on that. And maybe what I'm hearing is, I know, Don, I can't see your last name and I forgot it.
Steeler.
Commissioner Steeler.
That's good.
Is new to the commission, I believe. Commissioner Kubal is also new, and maybe what we need to do is just have a little bit of a workshop. What is the comp plan? What is this guiding thing? What is the future land use? To kind of have some of these conversations. Maybe, I know that we've kind of gone around and around with this MXR1 and the low medium density residential. Our options for conformance with the future land use map are twofold. We can rezone properties, or we can change the code. But we're going to need to do something with the low medium density residential areas guided in the city to conform with the comp plan's future land use map. So that being said, I just did some quick math. If we did 43,560 an acre, square foot an acre, and you divide it by 6, it's a 7,200 square foot lot. If you divide it by 3, we don't get there. We're at 14,000 square feet. So somewhere between 7,200 and 14,500 is where we're, on average, gonna meet those requirements.
But that includes roads and everything else in that 3 to 6, is my
But-
understanding. So if we even said the math has to deduct, what is it, about 20% for roads? Right off the gap.
Roads are developable land. So they're included in your,
Right.
they're not exempt.
Right. So that means you have to have more houses because the road is included.
Yeah.
And that is something that I have a real problem with. And I think I need to go back to state statute so that I know exactly what the requirements are. Because I think that there are requests and there are requirements, and I want to be very, very clear in my head what the powers and what the penalties are. Because we're not the only city that has this.
That is correct. I will say I had a conversation last week with our Met Council sector representative, Jake Riley. We had conversations very specific to this. How is it that the Met Council believes there are communities, especially in Washington County? In my former life working with the city of Stillwater, we dealt with this pretty extensively too, with just wet water areas, creeks, streams, lakes, all of those things. It was incredibly difficult. I don't know that the Met Council's position will change. I do believe in the next go round, I do believe that they might be a little bit more sympathetic in how communities are able to achieve some of these density goals, but that is 8 years out. So I think what I'm hearing from you, Commissioner Young, is we as a community should do some more research about kind of the Met Council's requirements, and what I hear is powers, penalties, with relationship to that overall density and how it's gonna affect this low, medium density residential area. I hear that you'd like to have some more specific state statute with regard to the calculation for that density requirement, including the definition for net and what is and is not exempt from that net area. I know that the Met Council is always willing to meet with their communities, but our sector representative, Jake Riley, is actually going to be taking a new position in June, so I'm not sure who our new sector representative is going to be. I aim to have a very open communication with the Met Council regarding this, and to help ensure that we as a community are advocating for ourselves, are advocating for our needs, are advocating for what we need to be able, how it is that we could possibly achieve their goals, but while also maintaining some of the values that we want as a community in terms of what our residential housing stock is going to look like in the future. It sounds as though at this moment, this commission isn't ready to kind of take any action. I've heard from at least 2 commissioners regarding the proposal of an 8,500 square foot lot. Mike, Justin, do you guys have any other thoughts? Anything else you'd like staff to kind of maybe examine as we take this away again and really figure out how we come back to this dialogue in the future?
Mike?
I'm a strong believer of the side setback at 10 feet. I'm a retired firefighter, and there's been situations where garage fires, garage fire, and it impedes on the residents next door, and you cut that down another 5 feet, and you could have 2 fires going, or 2 buildings, 2 structure fires. So I'm just a strong believer. It gives people room. Even if something happens in the backyard, I've had people, would break their legs, and paramedics got to get back there, and it's just 10 feet is, I'm standing strong on that.
And we definitely heard that from Fire Chief Newman. That is something that I think staff is very much in support of. I think it'll come down to this commission as you review plats and plans and PUDs of how much you're willing to give on or not on that standard.
It's a safety issue, that's all.
Yep, I completely understand.
Yeah, no, I concur. I think we had a sobering reminder of that several weeks ago on the lake. So,
Yep.
and standing probably about 50 feet away from it, you could, there was more than 10 feet, more than 20 feet, but yeah, from a safety standpoint.
Other opinions? I'll put my 2 cents in. I'm probably one of the few that are okay with going to a narrower lot down to 65 feet. My concern when we get down there is streetscape, and Nathan's heard this every time, but Abby, now you get inundated with it. You go with a 65-foot wide lot, we put 10-foot side setbacks on it, we're down to 45 feet. You put and what the realtors and the developers tell us is that I need 3-car garages. Well, that gives me a doorway in 3-car garages. It would look like a townhouse development, one after another. And all you need to do, drive by to my house and you'll count 30 of them that were on smaller lots, or 65 or so. And a good portion have 3-car garages and a front door. And the ones that have the 2-car garages, they look quite nice. So I'm up for streetscape, so I'm not a real fan of, but I don't know how you control that when you give a lot size to a developer, except I don't think they'll sell, but.
I think there are a lot of creative options in terms of required things, setbacks, but then also design considerations. I worked in a very design-heavy community before this, and I know that there are different creative ways that we can kind of impose what we would like to see into our zoning code. So it'll just take some time figuring out what we want to see. So.
I want to see a neighborhood, and I'd be happy to take you through some that are neighborhoods. Ms. Young.
One of the things that the Met Council does with its standards in communities, I still consider it an ex-urban community, is that they assume that there is transit or transportation other than cars available. That is not so here. The Rotary is trying to help get more folks as RISE drivers or with Lyft drivers, so that we can get some of our elders able to be a part of the community and go to grocery stores. We don't have that kind of transit capacity here. I don't see it for until at least 2040 at the earliest. So again, we're going to be much more car-centric than many of the urban planners or the Met Council planners are thinking of us as. And so as we look at these standards, that is one. The other one is, as you're starting to get used to our community, I had a specific request from the lady last night that I need to drive down around Granada. That area, we're doing the infill off of Goodview with the infill for that subdivision, and it's the subdivisions on either side. And then it would be good for you to also drive around the area that I call the horse subdivision. There's Palomino and Pinto and Appaloosa. And when you drive around there in the afternoon after school, the majority of the kids are playing in the streets because there just isn't enough room to have a basketball hoop on the front of the house, and there aren't those amenities, and the yards aren't big enough to throw a football or kick a soccer ball back and forth. So as we plan, what I'd like us to look at are, what are some of the areas that we have in the city that have challenges for families? Unless it is the community's desire that we're not looking for more families with kids, that we would rather concentrate on people like me.
I wasn't going there. Mike?
And the narrow streets in that area. It's
Yeah.
really a hazard. Wintertime, snowplows, people park, they're having a party, Thanksgiving, Christmas, they're parked on the streets. Emergency vehicles can't get through.
I can definitely see the decisions that have been made regarding land use development, specifically around PUDs, are not necessarily what the community or this commission, and maybe even the council, want to see moving forward. I think that that's just going to take a stronger development review team to really ensure that we're not going to carry forward some of those, what we might perceive as errors in land use in the past. So I think that's might be why I'm here, is to help with that. I hear a lot of really great things tonight. We're gonna take all this, bring it back. We won't bring you back this kind of MX1 lot residential standards without kind of doing a little bit more of a deep dive in some of the things that you've requested, to really kind of start to examine how do we really explore what are the requirements that are being put on us, and how do we really kind of meet them without kind of bringing you back some more kind of high-level discussion items. So,
Thank you.
Sorry, Nathan.
I'm not offended. This is an important conversation, and it's a good time to be having it. We all know that there's a lot of development interest in the city. We have a number of subdivisions that we're working on at the moment. If the economy stays strong, probably receive a number more. So this is definitely a very important time for this conversation, and I think, I guess I personally would applaud everyone for taking the time to get it right and do what the community wants. So I guess that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Do we have a meeting on June 8th?
we do have a meeting on June 8th. We will have the Hidden Creek planned unit development. It'll be a final plat and final planned unit development.
Yeah, the application in front of the Planning Commission on the 8th will specifically just be the final PUD, final plats go directly to the City Council, but the
Oh, that's right.
Planning Commission will have the ability to provide a recommendation to the council on that particular request.
Which
Okay.
one is Hidden Creek, please?
That is the one in Headwaters.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just also, Chair, for the record, June 2nd at 7 p.m. here in the community room, we'll be hosting a community workshop on the downtown plan. We have final plan drafts released that will be soliciting public input, so it's a meeting from 7 to 8:30. There'll be a brief presentation and kind of open house, I think, format, but opportunity for all of you, your neighbors, your friends, let them know that we have that downtown plan draft. We are holding a special meeting next week with the Parks Commission to just kind of go through that plan draft, knowing that there's quite a number of elements that either affect Lakeside Memorial Park, the trail system in and around downtown that's being proposed, and the possibility of an additional park in the area. So just wanted to give you all a heads up from that, but those are things that you definitely see at the time of that open house, June 2nd at 7 p.m. in the community room.
Thank you. We're at the other section. Do we have Councilperson Munson online tonight?
We do not.
She advised me she was not going to be able to make it.
Okay, so we'll start with then the other most important people here. Abby, anything else for us?
Oh, lots. As I told the council on Monday night, I've now 3.5 weeks in. I've taken quite a bit of time to review city code, city processes, city procedures to really analyze opportunities for amendments. I'm not gonna lie in that the zoning code is a mess. It looks like when the town and the city joined hands, they just threw it all together, and I know it was not a kumbaya moment, Commissioner Young, I understand that, but when that happened, they just threw the zoning codes together, and we were really left with a hodgepodge situation. We have a lot of codes, just not well organized. I'm looking at where we can maybe streamline some things that make it a little less confusing to do something as simple as put up a fence. But I'm also letting you know that it's been a very ill-managed division for a very long time. And so it's going to take quite a bit of time to kind of work through how we set ourselves up for better success in the future when it comes to planning, zoning, and development. So I just want to let you know that I'm here, I'm working. I applaud Nathan. I can't give Nathan and Franny Nielsen enough kudos when it comes to what they've done to help hold up this end of this portion of the community between Donovan Hart's term and mine. So that's all my updates for you.
Thank you. Nathan, anything?
Nope, just keeping busy. It's a very busy time with a lot of applications and various things coming in, so
Perfect.
trying to stay on top of everything.
Karen?
Nothing except I would reiterate the public going to our city website and clicking on that button and getting those updates sent to them on a weekly basis. Every Friday, you could get all the news.
All the news is fit to print.
Thank you. Justin?
Nope, nothing for me.
Don?
Nothing from me.
You survived your first meeting?
Survived the first meeting. I probably spoke too much, right?
Oh,
Did you want some
and they would
background?
like to know a little more about
A
yourself.
little bit more about me. I graduated from the University of Colorado with degrees in economics and engineering, including a master's degree in civil engineering, and my focus has been in structural. And in 2003, I started my own structural firm, and in April of this year, I just sold my structural firm. So I'm kind of retired, kind of. So before moving to Forest Lake in 2016, I lived in the city of North Oaks from 2000 to 2016, and prior to that, 5 years in Shoreview before, and then prior to that, Honolulu for 4 or 5 years, on and off, so, and then that's as far back as I'll go. That's
a high note to end on.
Yeah,
5
yeah.
years in Honolulu.
Yeah, I was in Honolulu for 5. That was a good 5, yeah.
Couldn't take it.
Yeah.
Come back.
Just wanted to get to
Welcome to the
Minnesota.
commission.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. It's good to be here. It's a good group, yeah.
Mike, you have anything?
I have nothing.
Susan?
Yes, sir?
Chair has nothing, so the chair is looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you all for your service this evening.